So we had Booker T join the show the other day. You got Booker T bringing the Hall of Fame to ESPN Radio on Saturday nights. But of course, Booker T's partner here, his wingman, is Brad Gilmore. Brad Gilmore and Booker T, they do the Hall of Fame, which again, they've been on Houston, ESPN Radio Houston for years now. And now they brought the show to ESPN Radio Saturday nights when there's a big MMA like UFC 303 this past weekend or big boxing, big WWPLE. You will have the Hall of Fame on ESPN Radio on Saturday nights, which is so awesome. Brad Gilmore joining us here on another edition of It's Still Real to Me, Zaslow Show 2.0. Great to have you on the show here, Brad. I've been fans of you. I mean, everybody's a fan of the five-time champion Booker T, of course. But I've been fans of you guys. You know, the Hall of Fame show. Really cool that you're going to be doing some stuff with us now with ESPN Radio. Tell me how this came together.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Booker and I have been doing stuff on the air since 2015, actually. And we started an AM station, then went over to the ESPN affiliate here in Houston, and we love it there. And we've created kind of this Hall of Fame. And, you know, it was a few months ago, we were in Las Vegas, and we were just trying to think of, like, you know, what's the next step for us? And one thing leads to another, and we get in conversations with the folks over at ESPN Radio. And then next thing you know, we got a deal, and we're going to bring you the Hall of Fame for those big events. Like you said, the UFC shows, SummerSlam's coming up, where there's plans to do something for SummerSlam. I know ESPN Radio was there for WrestleMania. All these big events that we can bring our one-of-a-kind take to. Because you know Book. You talk to him on this show. He's great at being Booker T all the time and putting it on and turning it up. And I'm lucky enough to be along with the ride. Booker's
a big – I think some people will end up learning and maybe even being surprised. Booker's a big MMA and boxing guy.
Man, he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. And I try to play keep up because I came into this whole thing a pro wrestling fan first. And I think like so many wrestling fans, especially from the mid-2000s, the Ultimate Fighter used to come on after Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And so we all became kind of UFC fans by proxy of it following Raw. So I've always been a UFC fan as well. And then the boxing, we've had the privilege of going to Vegas, man, maybe 4 times, 5 times a year and watching some of these big fights. Seeing Manny Pacquiao fight at the MGM Grand was awesome. Seeing Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 2, where Tyson Fury shocked the world in a lot of ways by walking the Bronze Bomber down, and just sharing those moments and being able to bring those stories and Booker's insight and my insight as well to this show to talk all these things. It's going to be really fun, man.
So how did your relationship with Booker T start?
Man, it's a great question. So this goes back to 2012, I think it was. I woke up one day, I go on Twitter like we all do in the morning, right? We all go on Twitter in the morning. Who needed me in my slumber? Let me check on my notifications. Let me see if I'm as important as I think I am. No, I was looking through everything on Twitter, and I saw he has a wrestling promotion, Reality Wrestling. They were looking for a commentator and said, send in an application. I've been a lifelong wrestling fan. Never did anything in broadcasting at the time, but just thought, hey, maybe I can, do this commentary job. So I get the audition and I go in and I completely crap the bed. It was a horrible audition. I made a Donnie and Marie Osmond joke. I'm way too young for that. You're too young for a Donnie Marie Osmond joke. I don't know why I made it. And I even fumbled the joke. It was a terrible audition, but luckily enough for me, at least, the show was later on in the week, and the ring announcer they had got strep throat. And they needed somebody to fill in last second. My phone rang. Have you ever done this before? 1,000 times. Of course. Never done it before, as you know. And that was the first time I worked with Booker. And he looked at me afterward, and he's like, hey, kid, stick around. I could use you, was his words to me. And then a few years go by when he gets a radio show. He and I, for some reason, we clicked because we're decades apart in age. We had different upbringings, right? Different experiences of life growing up. But we have all the same, we like the same music. We like the same movies. We have the same references. We like the same sports. And we're from the same city, which has a lot to do with it. And we just found this way of clicking with one another that has led to that radio show, him giving me that opportunity, and then, leading to this.
Have you been, or were you surprised? Because like you said, you love pro wrestling. Were you surprised at just what a decent dude Booker is? Because I'll tell you, I've had a lot of dealings with pro wrestlers. I mean, I'm on ESPN Radio, which is mainly sports as opposed to pro wrestling. Sure. My own podcast, Zaslow Show 2.0, is a Miami-based sports show, but I also have a wrestling podcast. Like, I love wrestling, so I've been around pro wrestlers a lot throughout my life, and they're usually, not all the time, they're usually very, very decent people and really easy to get along with. Were you surprised with that with Booker?
A little bit, but it's one of those things when you grow up. So here's the interesting story too. My first wrestling show I ever went to was a house show in Houston, non-televised show. And this is in the mid 2000s. And the main event of that show was Rey Mysterio taking on King Booker. And that was the first main event I ever saw, first wrestling show I attended. So fast forward a few years later, I'm sitting in Booker's office, and it was almost like the guy who I saw on television. You kind of know, you feel like you know him, even though that's a very exaggerated version of Booker. That's it is who he is at the end of the day. It just turns the volume up. And so I felt like I knew him. But I will tell you, I'm not surprised by the kind of person he is, but I'm always blown away by his generosity to everybody. I mean, to everybody when we're out in Vegas or we're out at a WWE show and 1,000 people want to mob him for a picture. He has the time for everybody, for literally every single person. And that's one of the things that's so great about all the wrestlers, because the wrestlers know, I think more than any other pro sport or sports entertainment, the wrestlers know they're there because of the fans. Like, they really know it. It doesn't have a lot to do with anything else other than their connection with the audience. And I think that's why they always turn out to be great interviews, because they know they got to turn it on, they got to entertain, and why they're great people to hang out with.
They're tremendous interviews. They have their job is, I have to be able to speak on this microphone and be compelling. That's why I always said when I was on terrestrial radio and I would have wrestlers on all the time, I'm like, trust me, it's going to be good. All right. Like, they're great talkers. They know how to talk. They know how to put on a show. Like, they're tremendous interviews. Tell me a little bit about reality of wrestling. I know, Booker, the first one that comes to my mind is Roxanne Perez. Mm-hmm. Booker's had some big names come out of ROW, right?
Oh, yeah. Just recently, Jacob Fatu had a little stint with us working under the learning tree of Booker, and now he's there on the main roster. We had the Usos, and that's where they got started. The Usos got started at Reality of Wrestling. Ember Moon, who's also known as Athena, got her start. Kylie Ray. There's been several names. Mace, Brennan Williams, who's a former Houston Texan who went on to be with the WWE for several years. There's been a lot of people who've come through. And the reason why our school, Reality of Wrestling, I consider quite humbly the best wrestling school in the world. There's a reason why, is because I had a baseball coach back in the day who I couldn't hit the curveball. Everyone has trouble with the curve, right? And I kept trying to, have the pitcher throw it to me. And during practice, and I was swinging, missing. And the baseball coach is like, you're having trouble with that curve, aren't you? I say, well, yeah, but I'm working on it. Practice makes perfect, right? And he said, no, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice only makes perfect when you practice perfect, right? And at Reality of Wrestling, we offer perfect practice because it's simulated just like WWE is, just like NXT is. If you come through our facility, the Walker Texas Lawyer Arena in Texas City, Texas, you see it's a full gym, full workout equipment, 2 rings in the back, a full show ring, a studio setup. We have lighting that the WWE helped us kind of put up. We have the LED boards. You have time cues. It's working television. It's knowing all those little small intricacies. Wow. So that when you get to the WWE, like Roxanne Perez, I am not shocked that she rose as quickly as she did. I mean, I remember Roxanne coming in when she was 15 years old, taking a Greyhound bus from Laredo, Texas to come in and train. And I'm not shocked that she ascended. I'm not shocked that somebody over in AEW like Brian Keith, who spent long time, started his whole career and got trained at Reality Wrestling, is now one of our head trainers. I'm not surprised he's having, his faction with Jericho, because the guys that come through our school and the girls that come through our school, they have that perfect practice.
So you're a busy guy, Brad. Clearly. Are you able to keep up with pro wrestling on television? Because, look, I'm not as busy as you. I have a hard time keeping up with everything. I make sure that I do. I'm watching Raw, of course. I'm watching SmackDown. I try and watch NXT, but it's hard to keep up with everything. Do you keep up with everything?
I find time, man. I find time to keep up with everything because I feel like, especially with Raw and SmackDown, AEW, I try to watch as much as I can.
Me too.
A lot of the times it's on DVR and I'm trying to catch up on things with them. But for SmackDown, Raw, and especially NXT, because now Booker's the lead over there. And I've gotten to go down to those tapings several times now and get to know some of the guys. And we actually have a working relationship with the NXT talent. They get to come to Reality of Wrestling almost exclusively. So I try to keep up with everything, but it is hard because it's a lot of wrestling. You got 3 hours on Monday, you got 2 hours on Tuesday, you got another 2 hours on Friday. Hell, if there's a PLE that weekend, and sometimes you have where it was like WrestleMania, where you have an NXT show and a 2 nights of WrestleMania. It can be a lot, man. But you know what? I'm a pro wrestling fan at the end of the day, so it's almost not, doesn't feel like a homework assignment. It feels like extracurriculars.
How cool is it now what WWE is doing, where they have this relationship now with TNA and just random stars from other promotions are showing up? I mean, it'd be like if, I'm watching, I'm about to tune into the Miami Heat. The Heat are playing whoever, the Heat are playing the Bulls, and all of a sudden Giannis shows up and Giannis is playing in the game today. Holy shit, I didn't expect him to be here. Like it's so cool now,
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's really a pro wrestling fan's dream in a lot of ways. I mean, I remember watching back in the Attitude Era, which I think is everybody's favorite golden period. And can you just imagine if Sting showed up, or Booker T back in the day showed up, or DDP, or The Rock shows up on Nitro? It was a thing that we would always talk about in fantasy book. And now that you have people like TNA, who has done a great job in the last several months of really rebranding itself, recreating TNA, and having a lot of great stars over there. And the reason why I know TNA is flourishing is because I'm hearing a lot of these guys and girls' names before I ever see them work. Their names are getting there before they do, which is a testament to what they're being able to do over in TNA. But yeah, it's a pro wrestling fan's dream. And to have something like they had at the last NXT show, to have Roxanne Perez take on Jordan Grace, the women's champion from TNA and the women's champion from NXT, battling at the UFC Apex in Vegas. It seems like how in comic books they have the Elseworlds, like the alternate timelines. It feels like we're in an Elseworld a little bit.
Do you still feel a certain kind of way about pro wrestling, now that you're in the business, you're most importantly, you're older? Do you still feel a certain kind of way about pro wrestling when you're watching, or, specifically when you're at the shows?
When it's good, there's nothing better than pro wrestling for me. And I still find myself, whether I'm sitting at Reality Wrestling doing commentary for the matches, or I'm watching from home a WWE PLE, or I'm watching there in the building, if the match is great, I get lost in the magic, man. You can call me a sucker, you can say whatever you want, but I get lost in it. I find myself at Reality Wrestling standing up and moving around as I'm watching these matches, because when you're younger, obviously wrestling is like superheroes come to life, and you can see these larger than life characters and stuff. When you get older, you really appreciate the art form and the craft. And I think that, yes, wrestling can be everything to everybody, but at the end of the day, it is a very, very specialized art form that I also think is just the ultimate in an entertainment boot camp too, right? Because you do everything in wrestling, and when it's great and the stories are being told, it's not about the moves, it's not about the matches, it's about the moments. And wrestling provides that for so many people, and it continues to do it for me, man. I'm still all in.
That's what I find is the biggest difference from when I loved it as a kid to when I love it now is, as a kid, yes, it was exactly that. Wait, I get to watch these superheroes in person if I want to? Like, that's crazy. That's not the way it is with movies, So when I was a kid, it was about rooting for, the baby faces and the guys who I want to win. But as I got older, it became about, all right, I took my son, we went to Royal Rumble in Tampa a few months ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not about necessarily who wins. It's about, I hope that I'm there and I'm part of the moment. It's about moments now.
The Royal Rumble, the countdown is, because I love the Royal Rumble. It's my favorite show ever, every year. And the thing about the Royal Rumble that everyone is excited for is, you're right, it's not about who gets eliminated. It's not about really even who wins the Royal Rumble. It's about going 10, 9, 8 and counting down and to see who comes out next, especially if you're there in person. Did your son love it? Did he just?
Oh my God, yeah! It was his first Royal Rumble. I mean, we've been to WrestleMania before he's 12. It was his first Royal Rumble. We were on the floor, so we were pretty close to the ring, and it was amazing. It's my third Royal Rumble, but it was his first, and it was so much fun. But it's about the moment. It's about being part of the crowd. The crowd is such a difference maker when it comes to going to pro wrestling.
Yeah, man. It's funny you mentioned that because when you talk about the Royal Rumble, the last Rumble I went to in person was in Houston at Minute Maid Park in 2020, right before everything.
Oh, that was a
shut
big
down.
one. That was a big one.
It was the one where Drew McIntyre won, and Brock had a nice long run in the match, but
Yeah.
also Edge returned. That was when Adam Copeland, who's now in AEW, Edge made his return after almost a decade on the shelf with a neck injury, and that was another one of those. I remember I'm a grown man, and I'm looking over at other grown men and women, and we're all having a moment together. Like, I can't believe I felt like a child again. And it was the same thing at being at WrestleMania and seeing 38 in Dallas and seeing Stone Cold make his walk to the ring and hearing that glass break in Jerry World and having that experience. It just, I'm telling you, and honestly, I know I sound like a home team guy, but no one does it like the WWE in professional sports and entertainment in general. Nobody does it at that scale. There's a reason why at like other sporting events, they play WWE theme songs like during football games and basketball games, because it gives people that feeling.
No, it's the greatest show on earth. It really is. I have a rule where, look, the Florida Panthers just won the Stanley Cup. I'm a massive Florida Panther fan, so it was amazing. But, it's like, hey, did you consider going up to Edmonton for game 6? Because they could have clinched the cup. And I'm like, I don't do that for sports, because if I did that, I spend the money on the plane. I spend the money on the tickets, the hotel. I'm out thousands of dollars, and the Panthers got their shit kicked in game 6. and I leave the arena, and I'm like, this was the worst night of my life. All right. I don't do that for sports, but I travel for I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. So I'll travel for Pearl Jam, and I travel for WWE every now and then if I can make it work, because it's a guaranteed great time. There is no scenario that I'm going to travel for WrestleMania or Royal Rumble or what have you, spend thousands of dollars, and not leave having had an amazing time.
Yeah, and they can guarantee it, like you said. Pretty much every time. This WrestleMania, were you at WrestleMania 40? You were there or no? You weren't there?
No.
But I will say that was one of those over-the-top experiences as a wrestling fan, especially to see that main event with Cody and Undertaker and Rock and Roman and Cena and Solo. And that was like it encapsulated why I love this business, man. Who's your guy, though? Who's your like number one of all time?
Oh, Bret Hart.
Bret. Oh, yeah. Okay. I understand. Yeah. To me, the ultimate pro wrestler is the Macho Man Randy Savage. Like, because he checks all the boxes for me. Great finish, great look, great promos, unique package, great ring attire, your memorable entrance, the voice. Oh, yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage. Like, everything about him to me is the ultimate pro wrestler. He's always going to be my number one.
When did you fall in love with pro wrestling? So you're a kid. What was the moment?
Yeah, it was 1998. I remember being in my parents' living room or family room upstairs, and I think that this is probably lost. Like, I'm not the oldest guy in the room, but I'm old enough to remember channel surfing, where that was the thing where we would definitely click it, and I think I lost the remote, so I'm clicking it with my finger and looking at what's coming up, and it sounds so cliche, but I just saw this bald guy with a goatee kicking everybody's ass, and it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I'm a kid, and I'm thinking this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my life. Had no idea what pro wrestling was. I don't think I ever heard of pro wrestling. I didn't know any pro wrestlers, but I remember watching that, and I remember hearing JR, tune in next Monday night right here on USA or whatever was on at the time. And so I tuned in the next Monday night, and once you become a pro wrestling fan, this, you're locked in. You're just locked in, and you love everything about it. And I picked a hell of a time to become a fan at the peak of the business. And I remember seeing the grocery store fight with Stone Cold and Booker on TV as it happened. Like, I saw it as it happened before it was this iconic moment. So yeah, man, that's where it started back there, seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then, I know you've experienced these things, to have these guys on the show and to have Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I'm sitting there with Stone Cold and Booker T, and they're having a conversation. I'm like the fly on the wall. I'm the wrestling fan, and I can't believe that I'm hearing these two guys have this conversation, and I'm involved in it.
Is that the moment from your relationship with Booker? Is that the moment where you're like, what is this life?
Yeah, we've had a few, but that's definitely when I get to talk to some of the guys and girls who I was and continue to be incredible fans of, whether that be Stone Cold Steve Austin, whether that be Bret Hart, whether that be Shawn Michaels or Goldberg or whomever we have on the show. It's always blows my mind every time. And, we've had like Hall of Fame, like Trish Stratus has been on several times. Every time I'm like, man, that was Trish Stratus. I can't believe it. She was just on the show. And, the young man in me is having a whole different experience. But yeah, it still is not lost on me, and I'm still always so thankful to be a part of it.
Brad, tell everyone anything anyone needs to know between reality of wrestling, what you got going on, and of course now Saturday nights, 10 p.m. You're bringing the Hall of Fame show to ESPN Radio.
Yeah, we're really excited about the Hall of Fame. Make sure you check it out. And also, if you are in the Nashville area, 102.5 The Game, we're on every Saturday morning. In the Houston market, we're Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You can check out the Hall of Fame on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. You can also check out, I do a lot of celebrity interviews and content myself for the CW affiliate out here. I just had an interview drop with Kevin Costner a couple of days ago. So definitely check out stuff like that. CW 39 Spotlight. You can just Google that. And follow me on the social medias, man, at Brad Gilmore, pretty much everywhere.
Awesome. I'm sure we'll talk again. I enjoyed this. Thank you for hanging out. Yeah, thank you, Brad, very much. This was great.
Thank you for the invite.